Does he still do the cane workshop?
Yeah.
He did he did it virtual this year, or last year, and I don't know. I think those virtual events are tough. I mean,
No one's. Yeah, totally. They're a waste.
yeah,
I
yeah. I
mean,
just feel like that's so hard. So
you can't. You
Yeah.
can barely grab the attention of a dealership at a conference. Uh, Even like when you've got a rep that shows up. Because my wife, she works for Ford Direct, and so she visits the dealerships frequently, and of course everything's gone to video and Zoom and stuff. And she's like, it's tough to keep a dealership's attention while you're physically there. And I was like, oh, I promise you, they're not paying much attention whenever you're on Zoom. They got themselves on mute, and people are coming in and out of the office, and they're catching about 30% of what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to decide whether or not a lot of this stays as it was, like a lot of the trade shows, just because on the expense side, or if the trade, because everybody's sick of not seeing their friends in person.
Yeah.
I think Clubhouse has taken that over.
No, I think you're taking over Clubhouse.
How am I taking over Clubhouse?
Because every time I look down my phone, Todd Smith's on Clubhouse. Join him. I'm like, Jesus,
Get
this
some
dude
feedback
live
about
on
the
it?
algorithm.
Yeah, I don't know how that's happening. So
I saw at least, I got 2 alerts today saying that you were on Clubhouse.
yeah, I like if I'm sitting here and I don't have something, I just put it on as like background.
Yeah, background. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, right here.
Yeah,
3 hours ago. And then this morning, yesterday at 1:04, Todd Smith pinged you on Clubhouse.
I think. Oh yeah, maybe I did. Right.
All right. Yeah, I think it's one after we can go live here. All right. All right. Dang, it's showing up a little fuzzy, but I'm sure it'll clear up here.
Huh.
Wait until you go live, then we'll go fuzzy.
Well, we'll go. Let me flip to Wi-Fi. Maybe I'm hard lined in.
I'll give it a shot.
I'm gonna flip this quick.
Well, while you're doing that, Todd, thanks for joining us today. And Dan, thanks for joining us. Dan's sliding in for Alex today. He's got some family issues to take care of, so he's out of town and probably on the road right about now, if I'm not mistaken. And so definitely, Dan, we appreciate you stepping in. And I guess what prompted this was Todd had written an article around flywheels for DealerRefresh, and we figured, this probably be a good topic. And then Dan, you jumped in and had commented, so I was like, well, especially with your position,
flywheels for me is clickbait.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's my only thing. I didn't know what it was. I just saw flywheel and click.
Well, that's why I used it in the title of today's email.
Yeah, if I got you to click and read it, I kind of did my job at that point.
You did, yeah. Good job.
Yeah, article doesn't matter. Yeah. Obviously, reading today's news articles, the actual substance of the article doesn't matter. It's just the title.
Yeah. You'll never believe. That's what you need to add in there. You'll never guess.
Yeah. I said, if you click this, you fell for it. Now, yes.
Now read.
So, yeah. Now the hard stuff. It's an 8-minute read. I know a lot of people are like, well, that's 8 minutes. I think, Jeff, I talked to you. You're like, I'm like halfway through this thing, so I maybe should have shortened it up a little, or
It was a long one, but that's all right.
Look,
nothing wrong with long form content. That's where it needs to go, anyways.
Yeah, like to get that concept out, it would make sense. I don't think you could write it in a 500 or 1,000 word piece. I think you wouldn't get the context of what the difference between using a traditional sales funnel, which we all use in automotive, versus trying to move to a more momentum-driven flywheel structure. That as a operational level thinking. So,
Well, I admit I had never heard of this flywheel thing. So I guess for everyone that's listening, why don't you give us a little bit of what's the flywheel? Where did this come into play? What influenced you to focus on this flywheel? What the hell is it, Todd?
Okay, Jeff, let's go all the way back to when the book Good to Great was written. So when Collins ultimately analyzed all top companies and tried to eliminate and find like what makes these companies great, right? Is it leadership? Is it, processes? Is it their products? Is it, what are the elements that really drive it? And one of the things that came out of that book was the term a flywheel, meaning businesses that are able to grow from their internal customer base instead of always relying on the input and injection of new customers. So when we live in the auto space, all as we care about is the injection of new customers. And what I mean by that is 95% of our effort is always focused on new customer sales, acquisition, even considering acquisition of service customers. Yet there is a profound underlying piece where if I could just take all those like-minded customers that I already have and create a longer relationship with them that is economically beneficial for the dealership while still providing value for the consumer, that changes the dynamics of the business from a lot of areas, right? It changes it via marketing because your cost per vehicle retail could be reduced. It takes it out from just managing the consumer experience. It's also learning to grow organically, not through, to me, marketing and brute force. There's a lot of elements inside there to unpack, and we could go as much as you guys want to today. And one of the things I mentioned in there is called the K factor, which is basically used to determine the spread of viruses. I had to go all biological.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting where, how the velocity of a virus spreads, right? It's like, hey, you'll contaminate X number of people if you contact flu is, I don't know, it's less than probably one, while I don't think they know what, COVID is yet. But the idea is if you can apply that same math to your dealership and say, okay, if I have 1,000 customers that are new customers, out of those 1,000 customers, how much growth can I get out of that number? Not new coming in, meaning how do I develop that 1,000 customers to, let's just say 10%? Can I get 100 of them to refer one person into the dealership? Because let's be honest, we buy because of our contact and communication with others, right? I know Jeff are electronics guys, so you'll go read reviews, and you were always getting the latest stuff, and you would review all types of sites before you would buy any new gadget, right? And I'm sure, Dan, you're technical too. You probably do the same thing, or we ask our friends, and this is human nature, right? We want to have that consensus before we do something. So when another person says, "Oh, I had an amazing experience at Todd Smith Chevrolet," that's a change in dynamic for now how that other customer potentially would look at that business, right? Versus them just finding you through marketing. So there's a mental change inside there that's super powerful, and we don't touch that.
Do you the concept? We've heard over the years, and I know Jeff this isn't news. The customer you have is a lot cheaper to sell another car than the customer you don't have. That's been around for years. Why do you think that this hasn't taken a hold on a grand scale within the industry? Is it tools, software? Is it culture? Is it education?
People. Think about this, Dan. How long have you been in the business now?
20 years, 21 years.
20 years. Jeff, how long have you been in there?
25.
Okay. So both of you learned the car business from the sales side, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was actually service.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot. You're the anomaly, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
You're the anomaly that flips from service to sales. But let's be honest, 99% of people start on the sales side. That's their comfort. They learn the mechanics of sales, right, through the surrounding people. And those mechanics are what? We think in 30-day intervals, and it's drive sales, drive sales. And if you don't drive sales, what happens to us in this business?
Get fired.
You're out.
Yeah.
You are absolutely fired. You do not perform in our business, you are fired. So that thinking permeates everything we do because our pay plans are tied to that. Our entire organizational processes, structures are tied to that. So we're living in a world we've created probably 100 years ago, and we've just perpetuated it forward till today, right? With a very funnel-driven approach to how we gain business. And
and the manufacturer does it as well.
Well, yeah, they're throwing incentives, stair steps. They're incentivizing us as animals, right, to sell more cars because they're pumping them out of factories and they need to get rid of them. So
and incentivizing the consumer on a month-to-month basis as well.
Right. So we train.
Yeah, so I think that's probably why you asked earlier, is like why do we continue to do this? And that's probably the answer, though, right?
Deep into our fabric of process and operations. Absolutely.
Do you think if there was a pay plan shift where even at the top, a general manager got some sort of pay based off a percent of repeat referral? Which
think about it. If I change your pay plan,
yeah, you're gonna work it.
I said, Dan, you're not paid now just for new income. Half of your pay rides from your existing customer database and how much you can internally add to that, meaning inspire those people to refer other people into the network. You would shift a massive focus to achieve that goal, right? And because every human is, I mean, not every human, but most people are driven by their pay plan, right? That's in our industry, in every industry, right? It's how.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate that term. I hate the fact that we're set up to be that way.
Yeah, well, it's a sales thing, and I mean it's just what's driven us to our outcomes, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, I always like being incentivized to sell more cars. But I think it's, to Dan's point, it definitely needs. We would have to have a culture shift to change, but I think you're seeing like it's bleeding from the outside in. You'll see these edgings where I think we already see it, like Carvana just trying to break the whole model, right? I think they'll probably, Vrooms will probably do a better job knowing that, yeah, they're going to spend a lot of money getting you in the door the first time, but they have to figure out how to keep you coming back through them to sustain that model long term, because they're front loading that right now, right? It's costing them a lot. They're not making money. So you can't, that's not a sustainable long-term model. So then you have to say, okay, that's not sustainable. I have to ensure I deliver enough value in this experience that you'll come back, but then you'll also tell other people to come through this process as well, that I'm not spending money to attract those people, right? So that K factor spreads internally. Look at Tesla. I mean, I bought a Tesla Model S, right? And then
of course
I was telling Mitch Golub about it, and then he bought one for his wife, Judy, right? And I actually got a mini Tesla car sent to my house from Tesla because it was that internal referral network, right? So they sent me that $500 mini Tesla for my son.
I was going to say, is your son driving around in that?
Yeah, man, I donated it. I was like, you don't need this, because he had already had one of those little Cadillac Escalade ones. I was like, you don't need another one of these stupid things. But, I think it shows that's that power. Tesla, they're already beginning to work that flywheel, because once you get it moving and that momentum carries it. You don't need as much to support it from a marketing side, right? You're not doing as much of, to me, that aggressive trying to convince people to come buy from you, right? It's happening on an internally driven momentum scale.
How much, speaking of fixed, and Jeff, I didn't know you came from fixed. I'm impressed. That was my gap.
I started up in the cleanup bay when I was 17 at the Honda dealership here. So I actually started off in cleanup just as a part-time school, And then from there, within a couple of months, one of their service writers had quit, and
There you go.
I can do
So
that job. So
if
Yeah.
Jeff would have scratched the crap out of an Accord, does that break the flywheel? So I mean, because a lot of this, how much weight is on the service side? Because obviously there's a lot more service visits than a sales visit in a customer's life cycle.
Yeah, so this is crazy that I just posted something today referencing customer experience. And a lot of times I think we really have customer experience wrong. Right now everyone's like, you got to give the customer a wow factor, and you have to go way overboard, right? And deliver like this amazing experience. Absolutely statistically wrong. And they've already proven that you do not get a like multiple value with that customer for any level of loyalty once you meet the consumer's threshold of satisfaction. Anything beyond that's just like, yeah, that's nice, but it will not change their mind next time.
really,
So, and listen, it was a 97,000 person survey, but you only have to look into your own heart to see the truth. Because think about it, like someone gives you great service, you're like, okay. But once you're like satisfied, you're like, anything more than that over the top, it doesn't make you lean one way or the other. It just stops. So they actually see a gigantic plateau. So you only need to meet it, right? And then other things that were, to me, fully shocking in that what I had posted were things like, what was the most important thing that makes customers who were loyal become disloyal. So like now they go, hey, I'm not going to do business with that. And part of it, the number one thing, which was a 2.5x factor, was not having their issue resolved on the first go around. So obviously service can break that a lot, right? They rush, they don't fix the squeak, customer gets it back, they're pissed. And then there's a lot of, there's some more subsets to this, but the number one thing is absolutely driven around that first experience with the customer. Did I satisfy him? And then not did I wow him, did I satisfy him and I move him on? You actually want to spend almost less time with them. The more you interact with them, more high probability that something is going to go wrong.
that makes sense.
That's an interesting concept.
It's not a concept. That's
the data.
Yeah, the data. Look, we can sit here and go, hey, I want to create that whole Zappos thing, and I'm going to sit on the phone with Jeff for 9 hours and talk about him because Jeff's lonely at home and his gaming console broke, so he calls up Zappos to talk to me. And, I waste an entire human's day doing that, right? Is Jeff any more likely going to continue to buy from you because of that? No. But we tell these stories, right, as peak marketing tools, right, that to promote marketing. I think that's more than the data shared and the data underneath. Once you start peeling back that onion, you're like, oh, that high cost of, and I'm not saying customer service has no value. It absolutely does. But I don't think it has the value we want to associate with it. And not only that, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I keep hearing we got to give the customer an amazing experience now buying a car, right? That's the fluff, right? That I hear.
I think you're hearing that because the differentiator between dealer to dealer has become so small. We've always kind of talked about it, especially new car side, having a commodity. So your brand, I think there's been more awareness to brand. That's something that we develop. But your point about data-driven is perfect because we hear it all the time in the industry and both from the stores and the vendors, is kind of that I feel like if I shop or what I like to do, and as a dealer, we've all been in the industry long enough, we have completely lost the ability to think like a shopper, especially in our space. So the data-driven piece is key, and that's interesting. Because I default back to like my gut or what I would feel, but that's the data. We got to remind ourselves. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, look, data. The truth is in the numbers, right? I mean, of why and what we do and our behavior. And look, we're very behaviorally driven creatures. We're super lazy, all of us, because we're built to be lazy. because when you go out and take risks, you have a high potential of getting killed, right? If you go back to our old brain. So risk equals potential death. So we're going to not take risks. On top of that, we're designed and our bodies are designed to conserve energy. So, we're not going to take action as much. So these are the things where you have to, I think, figure whatever you're going to do, tying to how we behaviorally act, all of us. And then, tune into that. And look, auto is no better or worse than other industries. I think we put so much emphasis on the front sales and just get you closed, and then a sales guy never follows up with you. I mean, that's not good, but we don't incentivize the sales guy to follow up with you, right? I mean, your pay plans, Dan, at any of your stores, the sales guy is not paid extra to get a customer back 3 years later.
No, that's the wheels are turning.
Right. So we think about these things, and that's one behavior. We want to shift someone's behavior. We're going to need to do it part economically, right? Because that's the one thing that will inspire us to take some actions if we feel we can achieve it. So that's the other problem. It has to be a doable thing. And then let's just look at, I know you don't have a BDC or organizations, but look at stores that have BDCs and the dealers are there. Pound the phone, man, pound the phone. And because that's how we all learned, right? We would pound it in our head. So we're perpetuating that. It's like the family is alcoholic, the grandfather, the dad, the kid, like they perpetuate it through a process. And if you think about that, we're telling our people to pound the phone, yet people don't pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Sub 19%, the latest data I saw from Pew Research. Now, unknown callers shrinks it down even more. And if you saw in any of your stores over the last couple weeks, where all of a sudden your connect rate was even lower, it's because Sprint changed part of because I think Sprint has some issues on their carrier network that a lot of robocalls were going through. So they shut that stuff off. So unknown callers went direct to voicemail. So very interesting. I talked to a lot of dealers with BDCs, and all of a sudden their call connect rate just shrunk out. Because
we did see that. We saw about a 10% drop.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't even think about that being the reason.
Dude, there's big things happening that are affecting us, and that was a carrier change that happened that affected every dealer who's trying to drive success through calling. But the reality is, we know that the connect rate's so low, and then we go, okay, we default. Did you send your emails out today? Well, what are these emails doing? They're winding up in spam folders, and they're winding up misaligned with where the consumer is at, right? They're just, why am I sending this email, hitting this button today? Let me be the monkey.
Todd, are you still in the market?
Huh? Yes. Okay. And I won't go into the whole thing, but during COVID, I sat in my PJs. I shopped 100 dealerships. My wife is literally like, you need to throw your phone away, because my phone literally was just like messages, just like, and it was crazy because I'm getting like 4 or 5 messages from a single store from different people in the store, different phone numbers, different.
Kudos to them. Wow.
This disconnect. And listen, I shopped almost every big. I shopped lots of groups. I shopped everything across the board. And I learned a lot. I learned that footprint, or that map, looking at the landscape of how we interact with customers who are AKA leads, and we don't even know if they're qualified. So we just think because they put a lead in, they're qualified, but let's step up another level into this and say, well, we create gating systems on the website that force the customer to relinquish information to get information they want so they can make a decision. That doesn't mean they're buyers. Yet we now throw them in a CRM, and then we attack salespeople to them to say, go hunt and kill them. What's
the alternative?
Well, there's a few different things. Like,
well, I know how you can get through the phones a little bit easier, and this might be something, Dan, you want to, if you front your dealership as a car warranty company, you can increase your increase your connection rate of about
I just got
20
one
to
of those in the mail
30%.
the other day. I should have brought it. It's amazing. It looks like a legal document. They're all amazing.
Yeah.
Even their
Oh my
letters. I mean,
God.
they don't have to call me. I'll open the letter.
Yeah.
I
Oh
was
my
going
God.
through
Since
my
Brown-
I was going through my
Brown-
rejected calls the other day, and there was literally 20 within a week's time. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Look, but that's an interesting thing, right? Like, how do you, and again, we approach everything from a funnel, and then we tack everything, and that's how we measure our entire existence, right? How many leads do we generate as a business? How many of those leads did we make contact with? How many of those leads did we set appointments with, right? This is how we live and die. But the question is that the most effective? And most likely it's not. But that requires, it requires different thinking. And that's why I wrote the flywheel article, was only to, I guess, put a seed into everyone's mind that, we really need to rethink what we're doing, because the one chart I put in there is absolutely frightening to me as a
Which one's
previous
that?
player, to say there's a chart in there where you see the cost for vehicle sold continues to rise, right? So it's up to about $600 and some dollars, right? So, and that's because marketing's more expensive, it's more fragmented, it's harder to stand out. And then the dealership's overall profitability continues to erode. So these are numbers that are moving away from each other. That's not a sustainable thing for us. At some point, it blows up. And I think we have a lot more heartache coming our way when it comes to fixed ops and everything else, as all these outside forces start to disrupt us of what's going on, whether we're talking about electrification, whether we talk about these kind of sideline disruptors that are just trying to change the game, these
Such as
the vrooms that are worth more than auto manufacturers at this point. I mean, and that's driven by the Wall Street dollars. But I think we're going to see a lot more like pain in our business models than, it's rosy. We had a very rosy year last year through COVID, and everyone said, man, we're so profitable. And I asked every dealer, why are you so profitable? And it comes down to one thing. You operated the business with a lot less human capital.
Mm-hmm.
You still sold cars.
Yep. Everyone tightened everything up.
But you operated with less human capital. And I always tell everyone, go into your doc. What is your biggest cost? It's humans. So the best dealers are going to have to figure out how to operate at the highest level of process efficiency. That should be it. And it's about how to get, people through that process or around the flywheel with, the highest level of consumer satisfaction, right? Not everything, but, and then to me, ultimately be able to do it in a consistent and repetitive model.
Dan, what are you guys doing with your dealerships or maybe what are some few things that maybe you've done since COVID to help with the efficiency? Is there anything that sticks out?
Yeah, I mean, we're in mainland Nebraska and Missouri. We had Missouri stores close one day, and then they realized it was the bad idea. The city did, but we didn't lose anybody. We didn't have to lay off anybody. So our expense line on the comp side stayed the same. We sold quite a few more cars. We had 2020 was actually a record year. Year-over-year growth on the new car side we led our region, I think, for 7 of the months last year. So so there's all these different variables within the business, right? I mean, we were kind of our second year into our branding. So when I was asking about like culture and tools, and we talk about people, we made that branding. And the reason I was tongue in cheek was part of our branding is that experience better side. We don't go over the top. We just realized from our data that the consumers really didn't have an issue with the site. They weren't asking for digital retailing tools and just kind of that broad sense. They were really talking about the experience on the showroom floor, the time it took. They felt like their time was being wasted. Multiple contacts. So we've all kind of done those things. No more finance office. Salesperson does everything cradle to grave, including
Oh,
paperwork,
wow.
finance products, and everything.
Wow.
The pay plans on the salesperson side are insane because a portion of that money from the finance, traditional finance role, salesperson gets paid on. So there's some big time pay plans. But
they're also spending more time. Have you seen that their averages cars per month sold went down once they added the F&I into it?
No.
Really?
The big thing, we have a lot of non-traditional sales people selling cars, and we don't have like those 30 car guys, because typically that model didn't fit with the consumer experience as well. There's some phenomenal guys out there selling 30 cars a month, and it's hopefully repeat referral. Those guys.
Well, I was going to say most of the time the repeat referrals and they've got their own
that's that
funnel established.
A well-established sales guy. Hopefully that becomes the shift. It did for me eventually, and it was fun to see people come through the door and, hey, Dan.
Yeah.
But the other thing on that side, we have been struggling, and like the question about tools too, Todd, is is putting all these systems together for that flywheel to work, because you have manufacturer programs. Some let's say FCA. I mean, you're forced to do something. Different CRMs, and that's the struggle we've had this year. The recognition has been life cycle management that we need. I thought I had it figured out 6 years ago when we were with our prior CRM, and it was working for like 2 weeks, and then it exploded. It just put everybody back into day one, and what an awful thing. We fired them, got sued, and whatever. So, and then the CRM we have now said they could do it. I'm sorry, no, the second CRM after that said that they could do it, couldn't do it. And the CRM we have now, we didn't even ask them if they could do it, because we realized that's just not what a CRM does well at this point. So that's the challenge. How do you make that, put it all together, the tools, the people, the culture?
Look, it's not easy with the landscape of what we have, right? You've had the large companies build these moats, like technological moats, to not want to share data. That was set up many years ago, right? And it's cascaded all the way through to today. We've become a very, I call it like a cottage industry. You have lots of great tools, but they don't connect up to everything, and that causes a huge amount of problem. And then you have this succession of when a good company comes out and then gets bought and then doesn't do anything anymore, right? Like leadership, the visionaries leave, and the big companies can't afford to keep innovating on the product. Now they have to monetize those products, right? They have to squeeze every dollar out of dealers, and that doesn't equate into building new risky technology that dealers may or may not adopt, even if it's better for the store. Because some of these big companies, their focus is them. It's not best for the dealer, right? And I think that's hurt us. I think that's, it's definitely a strain. I remember at my store, I probably had 60 different logins, right, to different stuff, and you're trying to manage it, and it's a mess. I think ultimately, a dealership's going to have to learn to control his own destiny and not completely be at the will and whim of the vendors. And I think that starts with dealers controlling their consumer database, meaning all their records, that it's cleaned and organized, and then they give it to a vendor who's then writing back to that system. But it is a preserved nucleus golden egg for the dealership, right? And ultimately the dealer will not do business with vendors unless they're giving and writing the data back. Because let's be honest, if you hire a company and they clean up your data, right? You put it in a marketing tool, it goes to, you hire an agency, they clean it up, they start marketing, they give you a report, right? That says, here, Dan, here's your results for the month. But you don't know that, like, Billy over there died, and in your database he still exists, but now this dude's dead and already buried, and you're still sending him warranty letters, right? Because
I
that
just had
data
the
didn't
article on my desk last week. Dan, can you get this
Yeah.
gal out of our system? I'm like, I don't even know where she's getting this from.
Yeah, I get those
No, but
frequently.
I think that's not an uncommon thing, right? That your cottage companies around you are doing their job but it's not an orchestra playing. Everyone's playing an instrument, right? And it's definitely not. Know what it is? It's a fourth graders playing their first concert, right? Like, and everything, and you try to clap because we're trying to hold it all together, but honestly, it just sounds like shit. So, and that I think is what we deal with in our industry, right? That things just don't connect up very well, and that unfortunately that burdens a dealership. So look, I've heard of guys building their own data, kind of what I call like EDW, enterprise data warehouse, then throw a lake in front of it, like it's called a data lake, and then everybody writes data to that, because a lake can take everything from structured data to unstructured data. So it takes everything. You could throw web data in there, lead data, sales data, and it's just like a kind of a giant mashup. And then you ultimately pull it through what's called like a ETL into a more formal data structure. Then you can do stuff with it later. I mean, that's the reality of what companies do, who put a lot of value in their database, like big brand consumer companies like Rue 21, like any like Bed Bath Beyond, like any of these box brands, they've really mastered the data. And I feel dealer success will be driven by their mastery of data, because there's gold in there, and it's leaking out everywhere. It's leaking through your vendors. It's leaking to your competitors. It's leaking all around you organizationally, and that's what you got to be able to preserve.
So what is what's the plan? What's the solution? What, as a dealer, what are your next steps? I already know we have a problem. Are we going the wrong direction? How do we maximize? Because we're not going to probably get to the point where we're hiring a dev or a database administrator or something like that that's going to be able to do that. What's the answer?
No, look, there's off-the-shelf stuff, whole.io, if you just wanted a centralized consumer spot. And the interesting thing is, you grabbed your customer data and threw it into something generic. Think about it this way. It then lets you hook it up to a bunch of other generic tools that are probably better than anything in automotive. I mean, do either of you guys use like MailChimp or Constant Contact, because you don't want to send it out of your CRM?
Yes.
Right, because then you're calling the customer and your first thing is like, hey, Dan, I sent you an email. Check your spam folder. Like, that's not a way to. And listen, I had hundreds of voicemails that is what they said. That's their opening to me. So as a business, I'm sitting there like, you're trying to sell me and you're telling me your crap email's already in my spam box? Like, how is that for first impression? It's terrible.
So we've kind of come back twice, I think, to the ability to communicate effectively with customers, not necessarily in the content, but actually being able to reach them.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get back to as well. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so and I know I was looking up the company that you're the CEO of now and founder. And just to be honest, like this text thing has been a big deal to us, and it should be I think for everybody. So there's a lot of processes we have around with text, and people tend to gravitate toward that. Can you kind of speak to where that plays in as far as the gap I can't have a life cycle management system if I can't get in front of people?
Absolutely. So look, during the pandemic, I also, I'm like a researcher reader. I read a book a week. Like I got to be consuming information. Like I'm standing in line for my mom's COVID test. I'm reading, like, ignoring my mom as she's freezing. So like,
poor mom.
I'm just trying to always consume information. Like I try to be a good son, but one of the things that really stood out to me was what I mentioned earlier. We're trying to slam square pegs into round holes. We're trying to do what we're comfortable with, which is calling, sending emails, and we're measuring our people against that. But when you actually
just
start
to clarify, our salespeople are not comfortable with calling. Just to clarify, but go ahead.
Okay, yes, but that's how we're measuring, right? It's like,
Yeah.
Dan, you make your 125 calls today, and you're like, I don't even know why I'm calling this guy Jeff. Like, what? Jeff was in, he talked to some guy Billy that we fired 4 months ago. Why am I calling this guy? Like, I don't know who he is. So there's to me a big disconnect in that. But I went through everything, and like we have splintered with how we communicate, right? So it was always the phone, and then it became phone and email. Then it became phone, email, and texting, chat started in there, and then phone, email, texting, chat, and social media, right? People talking through direct messaging on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, like platform, right? It's like we hit the wall after email, and then we just forgot mostly about what comes next, right? We just said, this, I know this, that I don't know yet. So I did enough research and said, I really landed on text, and we switched what we were building to a text automation engine. So think of like Marketo, Pardot, HubSpot that are email driven, and building one that is text driven first, but also has email. Because honestly, you can't communicate everything in a text. It's good for getting your attention, showing you a picture, a video, getting you to click a link. But most of the time, we probably need some other supporting something, right? And so I felt, okay, I can build all kinds of text flows that are less invasive to the consumer. Because think about it. If I call you, you put a lead in, and I call you 5 times, you're just going to be annoyed at me. Because maybe you're not now matching to my cadence. But if I just send you a text real quick and say, hey, Dan, I know you put a lead in on the Hellcat. Is that something you're interested in still? Yes or no? And you reply, yes. Okay, cool. I'm sending you an email next that has all the info on it. But you can text me here anytime. Like, think about like dynamic workflows where you can let customers kind of navigate based on what they're behaviorally doing. Not day 1, Dan gets this message. Day 7, you call Dan. Day 9, you send Dan another email. Day 14, you do this. Day 1,411, you send Dan this email that means nothing to Dan whatsoever.
Have you been reading our process?
Yeah, but I want you to come buy another car from me. And at the end of that email, you're like, who is this guy? So I felt with text, we all read them. So 98%, right? Read rate in it's like within minutes, probably it's like 4 minutes, 5 minutes max. We're going to read them. Response rates of 45% on text. If you just look in generic, like over, a lot of that is driven by value, like what's in, like any messaging, right? If you give me something of value, okay, I can deal with that. If you just say, when are you coming in? Not very valuable, right? And then my other fear was we have so many salespeople texting from their personal devices, which now pushes them outside of TCPA compliance because there's no opt-out capability. You can't opt out from, you can't text me right now, Dan, and I'm saying I'm opting out from you texting me again. Like, you'll just
Even if I just text
like,
you, reply, stop.
You can block them,
brother. I'm texting you more. Like, you can't stop it, but you need that as a business, right? You need the bumpers of safety. So I said, okay, we can build a platform that will do those things. And I said, let's trigger things off behavior where, I could ask you a question based on how you respond. It puts you on a different path. Or I know you clicked the link, and then now I'm going to send you something else. So let's think of a simple workflows. You sell a car. You're a dealership that really wants to boost your reviews. So normally what you do now is just send a blanket email to everyone, sold, that goes into the process, right? And that's dangerous, right? So I said, here's an easy workflow. we could send a nice personal video from the general manager saying, hey, this is Todd Smith. I'm the GM of Todd Smith Chevrolet. Hey, I just want to thank you for coming in yesterday and purchasing a car for me. I hope you had an amazing experience and you were completely satisfied in your journey with us. If you were really important and I get that feedback, just reply with 1 in the email now or in the text. And if you had any problems, though, in your experience, put 2. And if the ones then automatically we see, they sent back 1, cool. They would get, let's say here, review us on Google. And then I could see they click that link and 4 days later, you get a nice 25% off all accessories. Dan, I really appreciate what you're doing for us. Thank you. Here you go. Now, if they press 2, maybe it's another choppy cell phone video from the GM or a sales manager saying, hey, I just saw you replied to. It's really important we make this right for you. So I'm going to talk to my managers. We're going to get back to you.
So with that, a lot of the conversation around texting is the legal, like we all remember the huge headlines about the huge lawsuits and settlements.
Yeah.
I think that first one was a big Ford dealer, but
yes, $6 million.
So the review thing that you're talking about is fresh in my mind because we use Podium, which I think they're a third owned by Google. But the review gating, Ryan Everson called me one time because we were doing that on our websites. The reviews would go to the website, good or bad, boom, they'd go to the review, or they'd fill out a form. We would contact them and make it right. But I think with Ryan, either Ryan was telling me it was one of his stores or a buddy of his, Google basically blew out all the reviews because they were gating.
Yeah.
What Podium will do, Podium will allow you to do that, but it has to be manually sent. They have a system you have to manually send. That's where it's compliant versus an automatic system gating. If you had a good experience, press here, goes to reviews. Press here too, it doesn't go to reviews. Can you kind of speak to where you land in that? And then I do have questions about the automated texting thing, because all the lawsuits I've ever seen had to do with the robo-dialing, robo-texting, those type of things. I've not found one, and I did a ton of research, ran it past our lawyers, where there was ever any sort of instance of a lawsuit on a single instance, whether it was sent from a phone or another system, if there was no opt-out. Yeah.
Right. So, a lot of the lawsuits are around I just scrape all entire lists and now I'm just going to blanket them with a text, no opt out, no nothing. And I'm going to send multiple texts over and over. So we built our compliance engine because obviously I have the fear of what us crazy car people want to do. And
yeah.
I got to plug those gutters to say, hey, you can't do that. So we built like a spam filtering system for the emails. So we'll look at the email through our governance engine and go, you're going to blow it out. This is a problem. Your subject line's probably bad, just like a MailChimp, right? And then with text, through our legal, we said we forced 2 things. And whether you like it or not, we don't care because we're always going to end on the side of compliance. One, we put the dealership's name in the header of every message. So you know exactly who the message is coming from. Now we can shorten it because we want to save some characters. But we're going to make sure the dealership's name is in the header, or a subheader, like it could be Todd Chevrolet, or it could be Chevy Service if it's a service one, but we're going to make sure it's represented. And we put an opt-out on every message. So at no point you're taking that to an attorney and going, at any point you could have just opted out, because then you'll never get another message. So there's no, I gave a 1 opt-out and now I deleted that as the consumer, and now you keep sending me messages and I'm not smart enough to opt out of the process, so I have this whole string. It's not ever going to work. So our lawyers looked at the legal filings, and then we said, okay, this is how we're going to move past any of those potential libel situations. And look, our goal was never to send 50,000 text messages at once. Our goal was to create work processes that allowed the consumer to interact with your dealership in a flow that they're controlling but engaging, right? And that's the goal, right? Like another one I thought of, which I thought would be fun. I haven't experimented with this yet. Was, people buy cars, don't buy an extended warranty. So why not 1 week or later say, hey, Dan, are you still thinking about the extended warranty? Yes or no? Yes, cool. Let me send you some more information. Or no, not a problem. If you ever want one, just call us, right? That means like, wow, they thought about me and they followed up, and it's all automatic, right? So there's probably, the reality is a million workflows you could build. I always feel like start with a couple that you feel will fill something that you're not getting done with human capital at your store, or it's a tripping process. Like you can't get your people to do it consistently, right? And a lot of that is around just follow up, right? And that's all.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. Did you
Thanks,
just say
Jeff.
no, Jeff?
Of course, Jeff did. He's like my counter on everything. So.
Yeah, full disclosure, I had to Google a couple of those words in that article that you wrote. It was a little over my head.
Todd likes to use his big fancy words, make himself feel smart.
I write in Grammarly, so just download Grammarly. I write everything in there. It makes me look like I'm educated. I'm really not that educated. I think it was more the idea of, again, that article is about start thinking differently, right? Yeah. If you want different results, you have to think differently. And I think we have jammed up the funnel as much as we're going to get out of the funnel. Now reality is what's next, and what can we leverage in our dealership to move from we're considered lower than attorneys and politicians and dentists. Like, how do we just move up 5 spots? And to me, I think it's just, create a better process with less friction. I'm not saying wow experience, less friction for a consumer to get what they're trying to do. BJ Fogg, psychologist at Stanford. If you haven't read his book, I would highly recommend it. It's called Tiny Habits. BJ Fogg runs the probably most coveted course at Stanford on behavioral psychology as it comes to using it in apps and using it in websites. So everyone from the founder of Dropbox to Kevin at Instagram, everyone goes through BJ's course. And he's super awesome guy. And I've had interesting conversations with him, but it boils down to 2 things. Make it super easy for people.
Yeah.
And remove friction any chance you get. Make it easier and easier and easier. That's that flywheel. And 2, just help people do what they're already trying to do. Don't try to interject we'll do it our way because this is our process. When you approach a customer and they're mad and you say, well, this is our policy, this is how we do business, you have catapulted yourself to the stars.
To a negative review.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just blown it. Blown it not only for them, you've blown it for the 10 people they potentially could have given you over the course of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill Playford says it's the fancy words to distract the accent, Todd.
Yeah, hey, it's New Jersey.
Wonderful accent of yours.
Bill just doesn't like my Jersey accent. So.
Dan, do you negate reviews? Because that's one thing since day one. Now, when I got into the review game from the very beginning, which was probably 15 plus years ago here at this dealership, being a Benz dealership, we've always had really good customer service. I actually wish we would get some more bad reviews because sometimes I think it looks a little fake. But that was one thing I was dead set against, was negating the reviews. And back then, we were using a service that Dominion had eventually acquired. I think it's one of those products where a company buys out a solid little company and just shelves it and no longer does anything with it.
Or wrecks it.
Or wrecks it. Yeah. So I don't even know if they still offer it anymore. I can't remember the original name. But from the very beginning, I was dead set against the negating of reviews, and you also brought up the fact that Google does own a percentage of Podium. We use Podium here as well. Matter of fact, we had Podium on last week's show, just going over some of the different technologies and stuff. But it's funny because Google doesn't want a dealership to be able to game or negate the review, but yet they have a percentage of that company. I think it's funny because Podium offers that. Do you guys negate reviews?
We don't. We don't use that
cool.
feature right now. The discussions come up because in the earlier we were talked about service and how much services impact will put a little bit of a dent in the flywheel. And we've been working on service. I think a lot of times that motivation for gaming the reviews, should go back to, well, how about we just improve the customer experience initially? So that's harder. That is way harder than just gating a review, right? So sometimes that we have to remind ourselves to pull back out of that. But no, we don't. It came up again because when we turned Podium on, the volume came in, and it is very difficult to get a customer to leave a sales review where you want your sales review and a service review where you want your service reviews. And ultimately on Google My Business or anything like that, they just pool up. So we've actually, probably a service average review is, in that 4, where our sales average review is probably in the 4.8, 4.9. But since the volume of service is more than the sales, and like one of our stores, we're at 4.4 right now, and we don't 4.4 is not good. We want to be at the 4.7, 4.8, 4.9. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
it does. Yeah. No, we approach it the exact same way. And once we had turned on Podium, our review count jumped up as well. But we also use the Dealer Rater lot shot, all the salespeople. So we focus on the sales side, more of a Dealer Rater using the lot shot so they can get a photo with the customer. But then we back it up with the Podium piece, and then most of our Podium's just targeted towards getting the service reviews, and of course spread across all the different review sites. So no, it works. It works. And I've always felt as if, Todd, you were just touching on, you don't really have to go past the customer's expectations, just meet those expectations. And I think if a lot of dealerships would just read their positive reviews, they would figure that out real quick. Because if you go through and read those reviews, it'll give your dealership a really great idea or a good picture of what you're saying, but then also of what, typically what they're good at from the customer service. I think it was Tom White. Tom White said years ago, it was probably 10, 12 years ago, we were at a conference, and he was going to start a whole marketing campaign because we were having this exact same conversation. And I think the title of the campaign was, purchase a car from ABC Motors where car buying doesn't suck. He's like, all we have to do is not suck.
Our internal joke is we just have to suck less.
Yeah,
we
suck less.
We use that quite a bit, and I think some of the employees thought that was our actual. It's a tongue in cheek. We just have to suck less.
If you think about that, there is a vein of truth in that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, look, if you brought 100 customers in, and a lot of times customers have a very hard time putting their finger on exactly what they want, right? So a lot of times customers aren't the best, to me, resource to understand things, in meaning like the processes we should build, but they definitely have influential things. So if you look at talk to lots of people, look, they just want it easy and simple. They don't want problems. I don't want to wait 4 hours why can't you tell me that I'm approved or not in 5 minutes? Like, what, why does this guy keep running back and forth? Where's he going? Like, where is this Wizard of Oz dude? Like, and I think, hey, it's like, hey, sir, here's a can of Coke and some pretzels for your kid. I need you to wait 17 hours because we're busy.
Go ahead and keep shopping on your phone, by the way.
Right, but the problem is the customer doesn't care about that. That doesn't help the customer. Customer's like, dude, I don't care that you're busy. I care about me because everyone's with them, right? What's in it for them? And They have things to do and lives to lead. So I think dealers should spend 90% of the time focusing on their processes before technology. Technology should just support your processes. But I always say, develop really good processes first. And even if they're manual processes.
I'd add above there, go people, then processes. I think we think processes fix everything. We forget about the people.
I'm the other way. Build a great process. You can plug any person in it and operate it. Michael Gerber wrote an amazing book called E-Myth that documented it very, very well. Look at McDonald's. McDonald's can take any human being and jam them in there, even people with disabilities, and they can become productive assets of that organization. And that happens because they have insanely developed processes that they can put people in it, and then the people can accelerate beyond the processes. But it all comes down to super good processes. And I only bring up McDonald's because, well, between us and anyone watching, I'd spoken.
You're a big fan of the McRib, right?
Yeah, no. Many years ago, I was in Chicago. I spoke at a 20 group. I still had my suit on. I'm rushing to the airport. I was so hungry. I stopped at McDonald's. I don't know why, because I don't really eat McDonald's food. But I was just so hungry, and I saw it was right there, and I knew I had to turn my car in a block. So I pull over. I walk in. It's super busy, and I'm like, So I walk through the back. I have a suit on, and I pass the manager's office. And the door is open, and there's McDonald's manual. So I grabbed the manual, and I walked right out the back door, got in my car, got on my plane, hungry still.
You stole the
manual. Yes, of exactly how they do everything, from clean the bathroom, the fry, how the grill works, how the drive-through, all the diagrams and flow. Honestly, nothing, not one piece of that operation was left for interpretation. It was do this, and once that is ingrained in someone, habits built, you're going to execute consistently. And look, I've eaten stuff all over. Any McDonald's you eat it's pretty much identical, right? How did they do that? Consistency of process, and then plug people in.
Well, of course, now they're unplugging the people.
Now this is the realization for them that at a $15 minimum wage, it's unsustainable for the model. So at their price point of food, so they have to now take people out of that equation, and that's why they have the kiosks, and you go in there and you feel like you're on Minority Report, like with Tom Cruise, like the things like, "What do you want, Mr. Smith?" I was like, "How does it know my name?" Like, yeah.
I actually go out of my way to especially at the grocery store. I go out of my way not to use the self checkout anymore.
Right.
Just to do it. Dan, touching on just the efficiencies at the dealership and stuff. What have you done with text messaging? Has the results been, positive for you? And then also, what have you done? Has anything come out of COVID where that's allowed you to sort of help lessen that time that the consumer's spending at the dealership?
Yeah, well, our walk-in traffic went down like 29%, but internet and phone skyrocketed, so that's where all of our growth came from. But on the texting side, so as a strategy within the internet process, because that's my main focus is on the internet and phone with the auto group. We realized it's a very short message, and you said it well, because we've grown up in the industry. Closed-ended questions, don't ask that. But really, on a yes or no scale, in that channel, that's fine. And we use it a lot to reference. There is an email. We did have success in using the text on saying, because you get a response, hey, would it be okay if I called you in 10 minutes on this number?
That's
about
terrible.
So that's a terrible. Tell me why.
I used that for years. Used it for years, and to this day, it is the template per se. It's the response that would get the most response back. It was the first email we would send out. Would it be okay to call you at this number? in 10 minutes or something like that. Put some time restriction on it. And to this
I see
day,
you
it's
shaking your
still.
head. Tell us, Todd.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's great. I'm
Okay,
just
look,
saying it's always worked.
I know. Let's throw this into our lives. I send you a text, Dan, and I say, "Hey, man, can I call you in 10 minutes?" Right? In your mind, I'm gonna put myself in your mind. You're busy at the dealership. You're moving around. You got stuff going on. You're gonna say like, "Well, what's it about? How long is that call gonna last?" You're gonna have to process that. Versus, you'll just say back, "Can you just text me? What do you need?" How many times?
But I got a response.
I understand, but you could get the response the same way without forcing the customer to think. Because I always still believe when we force the customer to have to think and process, we start losing them. So it's easier to put them into a flow. Just ask them a quick question. Hey, what other information do you need that I can help you with? That's a text. And they're going to respond to that. Hey, I want to know the price. Okay, do you want the price only on that car or other cars too? Like, think about this dialogue that we could have via text, that you're totally empowered and in control. You're driving it. I'm not trying to blow up your phone to get you on the phone to accomplish the same thing I can do via messaging, right? And listen, I did this stuff at scale for chat with hundreds of thousands of conversations. I saw that it works. My thought was applying it to text is even better, because now the conversation could go on like back and forth. We could volley. You could park it because you're getting your kids, and you can come right back to the conversation, right? And we can pick up right where you left off. Versus chat, I need a closure point. Like, I got to get to an end. And for us, it was like, let's turn it into a lead. Where once I have you and we're texting, you're already a lead. I'm already communicating with you. And it's just keeping that dialogue and flow.
One of the things we did find, though, is when the salespeople started gravitating towards text, because to be honest, some of the younger ones would rather have a text conversation than a phone. Like, my kids right now will not call their friends. They'll text them. Will not call them. And so what we found was, once they got, and I called it a text tunnel, once they got into that text tunnel, they could not get out of that thing to get on the phone to save their life. And we still have had much better results. The phone conversation, set an appointment, has a better set rate when it was set by the phone than anything else. So there was this balance between, you don't
have the muscle memory of being able to do it via text. If you can develop the process, just as you spent the time developing it via phone, to be able to do it via text, I think you'll again have superior results, because you just said it. The younger generation wants to communicate that way. I read a whole article. I call it the mute generation. It's a generation that doesn't want to talk on the phone. So we need to be able to sell them cars. So to be able to do that, we better learn those channels and learn them as effectively as we tried to learn phone, as we tried to learn in person. And we better triple down on our processes and skill sets in that arena. Otherwise, the dealerships who do and are receptive to that, they will absolutely win this game. And that's where I think, Carvana, look, all these companies that are coming in here, I laugh because there's still 17, I read their filings, there's 17 human interactions, right? Mm-hmm. Via text, email, phone.
Yeah. They're not doing anything different than what we can do.
Right? There's so much more we could leverage via text than we do, right? And I'm not saying everything needs to go through it, not at all. But I just think it's an underutilized channel, but it can have profound impact organizationally. And then think about just organizationally. I said, look, you can use text for sales, service, parts. You can use it internally. Like, you're in Nebraska. It snows there. You have times when it's like, how do you alert every employee instantly? Hey, we're opening. You need to be here 30 minutes earlier. Or, hey, there's road warnings. Come in 30 minutes later. How can you alert everyone from the guy who cleans the cars to the guy who turns the key and opens the store, right? Like, how do you do that? You can do it with text. That's a power. And I mean, look around the world where, like, my wife's Mexican, like, they live on WhatsApp, right? Because it's free and it's Wi-Fi, and, like, everything. Like, there's a family group. There's all these groups that, like, her friend groups. And I'm like, okay, it's text messaging, but free in, all around the world. And you could do the same thing. I mean, think about text. You could have them loop someone else in. Hey, you need your wife involved? Cool, let's put her in the text so she's shared on the data. I mean, anything is possible when you put the creativity that we put towards the phone and email to the one channel that today cuts through all the clutter.
We implemented sending all of our service customers their bill via text that takes them to a mobile landing page where they can, they can make their payment right there, and it's been really successful. No, it's great. It's fantastic, and our customer loves it. I mean, they all love it, and they can. I think we've even got Apple Pay plugged into it, so they can use their credit card, Apple Pay. Right from there. It literally takes 5 seconds.
It frees up your writer or your cashier. I mean,
for sure. Oh yeah.
Hey, moving that friction away, eliminating friction. And this is the one piece that I want to build. So I just wanted to know the impact, because I was going to texting I can hook to a financial gateway, but I got to pull the RO and the customer pay portion, link those up, create the invoice in Stripe or whatever, and then send that link. But I'm very curious about the results on that. So I wanted to know how well that's working, because I think, dude, that's the world I'd rather live in.
We do it through Xtime, and it's very successful.
Yeah, they've got that feature as well, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of some of the other things, but
yeah.
I think like appointment confirmation, where you're having a human do it, text should be able to do that. And then if the customer says no, or, hey, well, here, click this link to reappoint yourself. Like, I mean, our dentists do that. Why aren't we as sophisticated as dentists? Like, why? And like, we're on the same, like, in the area of totem pole of customer liking. So we should at least be as good as them in communicating. So,
well, one of the problems too is, though, at least what I've come to find is most of the CRM tools out there. I'm sure you can attest to this. Is most of the CRM tools out there really lack in the texting solution.
Yeah.
And if text, and if the text obviously is probably the most effective, and we sort of touched on this earlier. It's like, Todd, where do you see CRM going, and do we even really need CRM anymore?
Well, dude, that's crazy. CRMs are not CRMs. CRMs are a Frankenstein collection of tools, from inventory management to desking to sort of a quasi customer relationship application. I mean, they do far beyond what they were originally designed to do, right? So that being said, I think through time we'll depend less on some of that functionality that we're getting out of the CRM. Look, why do CRMs exist in automotive? One, because we needed something that could inboard leads, right? And remember, there was no CRM before the internet. Like, we had the DMS. There was nothing, or I had index
Super
cards.
Boxes. Yeah.
Yeah, I had index cards.
That's what I had. Right? Yep.
So we needed the CRM at the time to process and handle the internet leads, because they were coming via email. We needed a tool for it, right? But now let's start like fast forwarding through it. It's the only way and the only tool right now that we measure and manage the performance of our sales staff through it. Mm-hmm. So we're using it as a whipping application more than, to me, getting the true benefits of it as a business functioning tool. We're using it to somehow try to measure and manage our staff at some level of a performance tool. So no doubt. That will change through time, as these things become more modular. As I said, I think that all goes back to the dealer ultimately controlling his own data, meaning his customer records in a spot that is his, and then that is linked to different applications through APIs. I think that's the world we should go. I think Techion is trying to push that world with what they're going to bring to market. And to me, they're the big plow in front of us. I think you'll see a bunch of companies being able to fill in right behind them to be able to deliver on that. So
cool. I'll have to check it out. Well, guys, It's almost 2:15. Went over a little bit, but great conversation. And
thank you.
Good, smooth and fun. So,
Yeah, man.
Todd, as always, thanks for joining us. Dan, thanks for sliding on last minute. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah,
Thank
Dan.
you.
So it's cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for catching my little error in my article. I appreciate that. So.
Oh yeah. No problem.
Yeah, my link was broken. I was like, oops. So I just linked
But
it to my
the
calendar.
word usage was
so.
amazing. The word usage was amazing. You're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually want to now, I think I want to link it to a text that will auto send like a link to the, like all the math if someone really wanted to become a math nerd of it. So maybe I'll go back and come up with something there. Put our text tool to work.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
I appreciate
Thank you.
it. Have a great day. Bye.
Go ahead, just hang
All
on.
right, that's it.
See ya. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, you got it. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. That was good and smooth. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was fun. Awesome. Well, you have a very good rest of your weekend.
You too, sir. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you, buddy.